Thank you, James, members, and everyone else that's tuning in today. We did 8 written submissions, and we're going to do a visual submission today rather than oral submission. So I'm going to go over the key insights and recommendations from the 8 submissions that we've done, and welcome questions at any time after this submission. I know we've only got 10 minutes. Can you see the screen okay?
We can, and we can see you as well, Jeff.
Fantastic. So let's start with what we agree with, and that is that we all want unity and prosperity for the whole country. But we also know that there's huge division right now. This isn't something new, and it's not something caused by this bill. The best polling we have on this, if we look back, is the Essential Guardian polling from just before the election, and it showed that 77% of Kiwis felt we'd become more divided, and only 3% said we'd been less divided. So this was our first submission. And before anyone says, what about the TVNZ racial tensions poll? That was very misleading for dozens of reasons that we put into that submission, if anyone's interested. This social division that we have, it's backed up by this Hero Donata poll done a year earlier. So this covers 2020 to 2022, and 2/3 of Kiwis felt we'd become more divided. Some political commentators will suggest that this isn't a big issue. Only 8% care about this, but this is simply not true. Māori/treaty issues are now the number 4 most important issue for Kiwi voters. This is just behind health, and it's now ahead of crime, environment, education, and other issues. And of course, we've had more than 300,000 submissions. So I'll start with an early recommendation here. Given the importance of social cohesion for our country, we need Stats NZ to run some monthly measures on how is it going. Is it getting better or worse? We've got some other challenges. Our MMP and media systems reward factions for creating that kind of division, so we need some solutions for that. A great starting point would be the new Human Rights Commissioners and Race Relations Commissioner calling out all uses of racism, but we also need politicians, media, academia to lead by example on terms like racism as well. And whilst we're a numbers-based organisation, we've done a lot of word analysis here. I'm not going to go through it, but it's here as a reference. These are the leading resources in the world for what is racism, and there's 4 key aspects. You might be particularly interested in the UN's. So if we have this social division, who do we turn to? And it's caused by, a lot of it's caused by the treaty. Who do we turn to? And Horizon and the Human Rights Commission have done some research, and sadly, barely 1/3 of us trust the Waitangi Tribunal, and it gets worse. We get most of information from politicians and the media, but only 7% of Kiwis, way down here, trust MPs, and only 6% trust the news media to provide accurate treaty information. That's below friends and family, below advocacy groups like many of those giving submissions, and it's just right there amongst social media too. So this is not a great situation. So we've got this division, and we can't trust organisations. We have to go to polling. And let's start with the polling that we can't look at, because there's been a lot of politically biased polling. And I know a lot of media are tuning in. We can't use the stuff or the TVNZ polling. Neither of them, this is all about the treaty principles, it's about the words of those principles. And neither Stuff nor TVNZ actually even tested the words, which is crazy. Stuff, I know you're listening, you had an incredibly biased question. You can't lead with a political leader in a party for a fair question and research. And TVNZ didn't even include the question or the preamble in their broadcast. So that leaves us with Curia. And I know some of you will think that they're right-leaning, but they have provided really accurate and fair polling so far. I've looked at all of their research design. And back around the election, there was very strong support, 3-1 overall, and strong support across all parties. Green voters were split. New Zealand First and Party Māori samples were too small at that time. Fast forward a year, and we have a lot of political parties being very active in their opposition to this bill. We have the media as well, with all of their coverage, and we have some slightly reworded principles. Now, ACT support really dropped. Nationals remain 4-1, voters in favour versus opposed. New Zealand First is even higher at 5-1. ACT's support dropped. Labour's tanked from 6-1 to 1-1, and one can only presume that's probably because of the stance taken by the party. Greens remained 1-1, and even Party Māori at the time had 15% supporting the bill and 44% unsure. 2 months ahead, back to December, and the third and final publicly available poll shows that consistent 2-1 support carrying on. So this is also Curia, ACT paid for it, but we've got 2-1 support versus opposed, and 4-1 for the final principle. Again, a lot of the results remain the same, with the reworded principles. ACT support went up, and Party Māori's support went down, especially after the Hickey protest. Labour and Greens remain 1-1. What's fascinating is this poll also asked for do you support the bill without showing the wording, and the support dropped from 2-1 to 1-1. So this shows just how emotionally, I guess, and politically charged this debate has been. A lot of people who don't support the bill, it's got nothing to do with the wording, it's got to do with what they've been led to believe or how they feel about it. Stuff and Curia, they've also asked about referendum. It's easily the most preferred method to, and I know a lot of people are going to be talking about the judiciary, and they've worked on this for 50 years, but the judiciary is the least preferred method by voters to define the treaty principles. And on that, I've got a full breakdown by party in the submission 3. And even probably more important statistic is that 38% of us would rather avoid the debate so as to not upset others. We've really failed as a nation to foster healthy democratic discourse when we've got 1/3 of us sort of too scared to talk about it. Some other related polling that is helpful for the debate. Kiwis want less co-governance. We want a referendum on co-governance, and we want hemispheres communications from the government. Co-governance was never explained well by the government, by the Labour 2020-23 government, despite the promises from Chris Hickey at the time. A huge percent don't understand it, and many more only have a basic understanding. The majority of New Zealanders would like New Zealand to be called New Zealand, and only 10% Aotearoa. This is just one of those other wedges that I guess is dividing us a little. Our 5th submission was very short. There was a lot made of the KC letter, that 38, actually 42 KC signed in total. But there was no coverage that 103 KCs didn't sign it. So 3/4 of KCs didn't sign that letter at all. And if you think about the retired KCs, only 4 signed it, and about 60 to 70 more did not sign it. And later today, you're going to hear from Common Grace Aotearoa. They're going to tell you 440 Christian leaders signed a similar letter, but they're not going to tell you about the many more thousands of Christian leaders who did not sign it.
So what are active KCs?
On to media bias, because we just sort of talked about that then. 2/3 of journalists self-identify as left-wing. Only 1/3 of Kiwis trust the media. We're in the bottom 3 in the Western world for media trust, with the US and UK. The number 1 cause is political bias and a lack of facts. And we saw that come through this whole debate. Whether it's the Hickey promotion, bad polls being promoted, good polls being hidden, the coverage of that KC letter. And Harold, I know you're tuning in too, but you deleted comments on 5 different treaty stories. No other stories, only treaty stories, and you deleted all of our comments. It gets worse. Only 6% of us out here, citizens, trust the news media to provide us with accurate information about the treaty, and perhaps this is because 77% of journalists think that the treaty applies to all or most stories. Private media can do what they wish, of course, within the laws of our nation. But state media has an obligation to the taxpayer. And we have One News as the most biased state media outlet. They're rated 15% left wing by voters. The complaints have doubled from 1,000 to 2,000 per year, and they now only uphold 1%. The real problem here is the Broadcasting Act or Code of Broadcasting Standards. And a lot of people who are watching this will be shocked to know that it is specifically written into the code that media, state-owned media, is allowed to be politically biased with their taxpayer funds. And there is the exact wording there. So the solution is we have to remove that. We have to fix that code up. We also need state-owned media to reflect the views of citizens, and we need to legislate against social media suppression of political opinions. Onto ethnicity race data. We've seen away dozens of OIAs. We actually have no race data at all in New Zealand, and we have very flawed ethnicity data. So rather than go through all of this in detail, I encourage anyone to look into the submission number 7 to see what all those flaws are. But
just letting you know, there's about just under a minute left.
Yeah. We have all of this data. We place all this importance on ethnicity, but we don't place the same importance on how we measure that or gather it and verify it. We've done some work that estimates that 9% of the country is made up of Māori ancestry. We'd love Parliament to review this important piece of work. Finally, we have elected representatives who aren't even representing us, whether it's a treaty, not even their own voters on the treaty bill, Three Waters, Māori Awards, citizens-initiated referendums, haven't had one for a decade. We had 5, but National ignored the results. And a final summary slide here. For the treaty principles, the status quo, it's not working, it's not defined, judiciary is not preferred. We either define these treaty principles in legislation, we remove the treaty principles from legislation, which is National New Zealand First policy, or we elevate the Bill of Rights Act. Thank you very much. I know there's a lot here, and I'm willing to share a lot more and answer any other questions with politicians or media after this.
Thanks, Jeff. That's the time for this section today, but we appreciate your submission and your detailed information as usual.
Great. Thank you, guys.
Yes, folks, we've got now submission from Carl.
Which, it's a shame we can't have questions. But yeah, it is interesting some of the things that have been brought up in that submission. For of active KCs, I gave Huhana probably would be able to answer it better. Those who are actively practicing law are not retired, because I give a KC as kind of like a
lifetime. Yeah, they don't. Basically, a KC is a KC once appointed until death. So till they're unalived, apparently is the phrase they use these days. Can't even say death without people having a fit. But it's the fact of the matter is, it doesn't matter if they're working or not. That even if they're retired, they bring them out of retirement sometimes to take on roles. So they're always a KC.
Remind me, what does KC stand for?
King's Council. Or, if we want to be, I'd love it to be changed to Queenie's Council.
Surprised I haven't heard of it.
Unfortunately, they used to be known as QCs.
Yeah. We've had QCs my entire life because she became queen.
Yeah.
When she died, then the king becomes the king. They automatically become KCs.
Roger.
So it goes from QC to KC.
Makes sense.
It does feel weird when we had, 70 years of QCs. So a whole generation was brought up with only ever knowing QCs as the thing.
I think there's numbers, though. What's problematic is it's not the bias of the media. Yeah, that is an issue, but I would say News Talk ZB, whatever, is probably one of the worst, most biased ones I've ever seen. But it's the misinformation. It's the deliberate attack on valid research, on valid information that is now brought to the point where people no longer trust academics like myself. People who've actually got the skills and the knowledge are being attacked and being mocked and being abused, while the people who have opinions but no facts behind them are the ones being raised up high as the experts. And this is why we're in the mess we're in. If you ever saw that movie, Don't Look Up, it's a comedy.
Oh, excellent.
But it's absolutely factual when it comes
goosebumps.
When it comes to people. We've got war about to break out. We've got distrust around the globe. And we're seeing a repeat of the lead up to World War II. And yet what are we doing? And this is the thing. We are buying into this misinformation. I mean, Elon Musk does 2 salutes and the world is mad, and yet he's getting into their treasury everywhere around. And yet America has suddenly become a completely inept country. China is stepping up and stepping in and putting its little tentacles everywhere, and we're looking at the next superpower possibly.
Yeah.
And what we've got is a whole bunch of people faffing around arguing about vaccinations. We've got the rise
Or
of
how many?
polio.
Yeah, or like it was one that's here. I have had people tell me, because according to them, I'm delusional. I need to be sectioned up to the Mental Health Act because I keep saying and have shown dash cam footage of at AM peak the Newtown to CBD cycle lane filled with cyclists. And some people say, no, you're delusional. Well, if you're going to keep saying that, you need to be sectioned under the Mental Health Act. Now, that is a very, it is sad that people have to use that legislation threat to have against someone because they have a disagreeing view with facts that back them up.
But this is the modus operandi. I mean, Seymour. I was warning people 10 years ago about his euthanasia stand that he would extend it to disabled. Look at the breakdown of our health system. Look at the fact his submissions went through. No one said a word, and he's about to extend our Euthanasia Act to disabled. That happens in Canada. A homeless person who was disabled asked for euthanasia because she couldn't get an accessible house. We're selling off our Housing New Zealand houses. We're ruining our health system. Look at what's going on and stop these conspiracy theories, and let's look at reality. He is destroying. Now, he called me mad back then because I invoked and said he was going to implement something similar to Action T4, where over 350,000 disabled were murdered by Hitler under the guise of it being good for the country. The same argument Seymour is making here. And this is why we need to be very, very careful, and we need to be listening to the warning signs, or else we're going to see them again. We've got 1 year and 9 months. We had 1.2 million non-voters. We need to get these people voting. 400,000 new non-voters is what tipped it to the right. So that's where the danger is.
Same again in 2008. I said there were more that did not vote who were eligible to that voted for the party who won.
2011, 2014.
Yep. The minute you don't vote, they could have been angry, but they could have done a protest vote and maybe shock of horrors, get the Greens into Māori in.
Yeah, or could have done like what happened in both Wellington Central and Rangatahi electorate, where they went, screw you, Labour, but no National, you're not getting our votes, we're going for Tamafa Paul and Julian Genter.
I mean, even Winston Peters has lost the plot. I mean, Shane Jones is on some power drug over mining. We're going to watch our beautiful resources destroyed. Our country is unique because of its beauty, because of it being Polynesian. Yeah, and the new argument, this is the one thing you need to watch out for. The new argument from the haters of Indigenous is that what they're saying is, but we've all travelled here. We're all settlers. What they forget is that Māori are Polynesian. We've been in the Polynesian areas for thousands of years. We arrived in Aotearoa over in different parts. We didn't all come on the big migration. People have got to stop the bullshit and get real. Indigenous are Indigenous. Settlers are settlers. Let's come together and find a solution, but let's not take away our rights.
Let's kick off with...
Thanks for watching. Make sure you're subscribed to our Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, Instagram, TikTok.